Needless to say, an investigation of the 9/11 crime scene following the National Investigation Standards has never been conducted, and never will be, as Giuliani oversaw the illegal destruction of the evidence itself. In the late 1990s, the mayor oversaw the creation of a state-of-the-art $13 million emergency command center to coordinate the city's disaster recovery and response efforts. Located on the 23rd floor of World Trade Center Building 7, just across Vesey Street from the Twin Towers, the center, dubbed by local press at the time as Giuliani's bunker, included reinforced, bulletproof, and bomb-resistant walls, its own air supply and water tank, beds, showers to accommodate 30 people, and 3 backup generators. It could be used to monitor all of New York's emergency communications frequencies and was staffed 24 hours a day. And yet, remarkably, on the morning of 9/11, neither Mayor Giuliani nor any other city personnel or police or fire department officials were in the bunker after the Twin Tower strikes. So why wasn't the mayor and the city's emergency personnel in the location that had been purpose-built for just such an event? According to Giuliani, they had been told to evacuate because they had been given a warning that the Twin Towers were going to collapse. A warning that was evidently not passed on to any of the emergency personnel that were still working in the buildings. Giuliani, in his own words, has admitted that he was warned that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. This despite the fact that there was no possible way for this to be predicted in the first hour of the unfolding disaster. Even more incredibly, despite being given this warning, no effort was made to pass it on to the police, firefighters, and other responders who were still working in and around the buildings. It is no wonder, then, that the fire department of New York so passionately detests Giuliani for his actions in disgracing their fallen brothers and covering up the 9/11 crime.
Rudy Giuliani has used the horrible events of September 11, 2001 to create a carefully crafted persona. But the fact is, what Rudy portrays is not a full picture of the decisions made that led, in our view, to the unnecessary deaths of our FDNY members and the attempt to stop the dignified recovery of those lost.
Reporting here from Times Square, I am standing next to Rudy Dent. He's a 32-year veteran of the New York City Fire Department. He's worked as well with the New York City Police Department. And you retired right after 9/11. He was there on 9/11. He saw World Trade Center Tower 7 come down. Rudy, tell us about what happened that day.
Well, I was off that day, and I received a call at home, and I got to see both buildings come down on TV. I jumped on my motorcycle. I did about 120 miles an hour across the Tappan Zee. I reported to my firehouse, and then I got my gear. A bunch of us got together. We commandeered a mail truck, and we made our way down to the site. At that time, Building 7 was still up. I saw Building 7 come down. My fellow firefighters who were there, they did that involuntary jerk when a loud explosion goes off. You know, you can't help it, and they did. I'm a Vietnam veteran too, so I kind of didn't jump like they did, but there was an explosion. The building did come down in complete classical controlled demolition. It came down on its own footprint. There's no question.
And then talk to me a little bit, obviously, as a professional in the fire department for 30 plus years, they're saying that blaming it on office fires, just a few office fires.
Well, if it wasn't so serious a situation, that would be completely laughable. That is ridiculous. First of all, our guys were up there. They were calling for additional hand lines to mop up the isolated pockets of fire. And let me just explain one thing. Never in the history of the world, never in the history of high-rise skyscrapers has ever a skyscraper ever come down because of fire. And I'm talking massive fire. And you know the reason why? Because fire does not burn by itself hot enough to compromise and melt steel.
You see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry.
Yeah, like lava.
Like lava.
What we had in the World Trade Center and I saw myself, was molten lava-like pockets of molten steel. All right, I spent the night on the pile searching for bodies, and I saw that with my own eyes. So who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe a bunch of government bureaucrats or my fellow brothers, which I lost 343 guys that day? And I lost Tommy O'Hagan, Bruce Van Hines, and Kenny Kumpel. And I can never forget that. I think of that before I go to bed. I think about it the first thing in the morning when I wake up. And it's in honor of them and their family that I will continue to do everything I can to make the rest of the world wake up to the fact that this was a false flag operation.
Right.
They call you a conspiracy theorist, and instead of talking about the technical, they want to know the who, the whys, and the whats. In other words, they want to engage in conspiracy theory. World Trade Center 7, I have no idea how they could do something like that, but it's obvious through the evidence we have that it was brought down in controlled demolitions. So that is a job for policemen and investigators. That's their job, and they are failing at this point to accomplish that.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, I was working on the Brooklyn side of the East River, just north of the Williamsburg Bridge. Having been an eyewitness to the attacks that day, and from being called to duty to assist the Fire Department of New York in the following days and weeks afterwards, 9/11 has never been far from my thoughts, having been burned forever into my soul. The 9/11 Commission concluded that Osama bin Laden and a group of Islamic extremists were responsible and carried out the attacks, and that was to be the end of it. Truth be told, that is far from the end of it. The 9/11 Commission was flawed, and in the words of two of its own, the chairman and the vice chairman of the 9/11 Commission, respectively, Thomas Keane and Lee Hamilton, who stated in their book, without precedent, that they were set up to fail and were starved of funds to do a proper investigation. That's their own words. They also confirmed that they were denied access to the truth and misled by senior officials in the Pentagon and the Federal Aviation Authority, and that this obstruction and deception led them to contemplate slapping officials with criminal charges. The final report did not examine key evidence and neglected serious anomalies in the various accounts of what happened. The commissioners themselves admit their report was incomplete and flawed, and that many questions about the terror attacks remain unanswered. Nevertheless, the 9/11 Commission was swiftly closed down on August 21st, 2004. What happened on 9/11 is fundamentally important, but equally important is the way the 9/11 cover-up signifies an absence of democratic, transparent, and accountable government. Establishing the truth is, in part, about restoring honesty and trust and confidence in the American political system. That is why, on July 24th of this year, the Franklin Square Munson Fire District voted unanimously to adopt a legal resolution of support for the special federal grand jury investigation before the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. The almost 3,000 innocent people who were murdered right before our eyes that day cannot speak, so it is left up to us to speak for them and demand that their voices be heard in a court of law with subpoena power and an impartial jury to consider all of the evidence by placing 9/11 under a microscope and investigating everything and anything down to the smallest of details. I demand to know, as should everyone, especially the media, why important testimony made that day from over 150 police, firefighters, and first responders regarding explosions wasn't included in the commission report, nor investigated further? Why didn't the FBI or NIST examine the wreckage for explosives? Why wasn't Ground Zero considered a crime scene and sealed off and processed accordingly? Why was crucial evidence of melted structural steel suppressed and not even considered, or worse yet, allowed to be carted off and destroyed? Why won't, after 18 years, mainstream media such as ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or Fox News, and if Fox News here, I take that back and I apologize, report on any of this, let alone ask the hard questions of how and why certain things occurred the way they did, especially in the collapse of the third World Trade Center building, building number 7, that most people don't even know about. And finally, why can't Americans hear about FDNY Battalion Chief Oreo Palmer, who succeeded in making it to the point of impact on the 78th floor of the South Tower with his men, and reported that he had 2 isolated pockets of fire and that we should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. So he made it up to the fire floor and he saw what was going on. And contradicting the official storyline that it was a raging fire up there. Here's a brave fireman who made it onto the fire floor and was doing his job. 1 minute after the final transmission, the South Tower collapsed.
Battalion 7 on floor 40 of Tower 2. We got 1 elevator working up to the 40th floor, staffed by a member of Ladder 15.
As Chief of Battalion 7, Palmer was amongst the first to arrive at the scene. As he entered the South Tower, he single-handedly fixed an elevator and took it to the 40th floor, halfway to where almost 700 people were struggling to stay alive.
And then he started to climb on foot. And because he was a very, very fit man, he was able to make tremendous progress. He had run marathons, he ran half marathons.
We're on the 43rd floor, near Stairway B. On floor 3, trying to get up to Oreo. I'm up to 5'5".
He went 12 floors in 10 minutes, wearing all the bunker gear, which is 50 or 60 pounds.
We're going to have to host it. I'm on 69 now, so we need to higher back, please. These stairway walls have been compromised on 73 and 74. The walls are breached, so be careful. Okay. That's 10 floors, 6 more to go.
During his ascent, Palmer discovered that one stairwell, the south, was still intact all the way to the impact zone and beyond. For the hundreds trapped there, this stairwell could have been an escape route.
What stair are you in, Oreo? South Tower, South Tower. We got 2 isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor, numerous 1045 code lines. 478. That's all of it. Numerous civilians, there's 2 engines up here. All right, 10-4, we're on our way.
When I heard the tapes, you were watching a screen with all the words on it, but with a digital countdown, so you knew exactly what was coming. You knew the exact minute that the towers were going to go down. And you can't help but feel like you want to jump out of your seat and say, hurry up and get out of there. You know, you have 1 more minute before it comes down. And that's the hard part. That was the hard part. I was not surprised when I heard that Oreo had made it to the 78th floor. He made it up to the point of impact, and it's amazing.
Why can't Americans hear about that it took a lawsuit under the Freedom of Information Act by the New York Times to get the fire department tapes released so that the public could hear exactly what the firefighters said. This occurring in August of 2005, almost exactly a year after 9/11 Commission had disbanded. So it would seem, until now, that we have left unmolested those who set fire to the house and prosecuted those who sounded the alarm. But that is changing. People lie, but the facts don't. All the American people want now, after 18 years, is the truth based on the facts. The bottom line here is that the American public has not been told the complete truth about the events of that fateful autumn morning 18 years ago.
The way to get the message out, you need the fire department. The fire department is going to be important here because people can identify with first responders. And so to have somebody from the fire department, it accomplishes a couple of things. It validates what architects and engineers and other groups have been saying all along, trying to get new investigation, because we support architects and engineers and we support the lawyers committee. So to have the fire department get on board with that, that validates that, and that people could relate to that. So that was very important. Being a fire commissioner and from a fire district in New York, we're right on top of 9/11. And we lost a couple of people. I lost a couple of good friends, and I wanted to do something about that. So finding myself in a unique position, I brought it up with the other commissioners in Franklin Square, and I wanted to do something, and I wanted to pass a resolution, and I knew it would be mostly symbolic because it's really not anything other than a statement reaffirming our principles, that we believe in the rule of law and we believe in what the Lawyers Committee has done in submitting this petition to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and we wanted to get that message out there to everyone that the fire department is coming out in support of this. But I believe what David is doing is the most critical thing that can be done, and that is to get this into a court of law, to get that grand jury impaneled, and to start getting the evidence out there. That's the only recourse that we have. There's no other recourse here. We have to, because they're in a court of law, it's either this or that. There's really no gray area. The law says it's this way, and that's the way it has to be done. So I believe in the rule of law.